Hello everyone, welcome to Lecture 5 in Unit 2 in our series on political science. This lecture is going to be on Marxism in international relations and dependency theory. Now, before we continue with this video, I want you to go to Canvas, go to the module for this class, and I want you to watch the video called Global Wealth Inequality first. Click it, watch it, pause this video, I'll wait, come back when you're done. All right, you back? Okay, let's keep going. So quickly, recapping neoliberalism. As we said, it's the evolution of classical liberalism. It values the promotion of democracy through the use of soft power. And we said that soft power is any potential way to project power without using military force or coercion. And we said that behind neoliberalism, there's two main theories, democratic peace theory and democratic development theory. And we went over those in the last lecture. I don't really think I need to go over them again. But the key question that Marxism asks in reaction to neoliberalism, and based on the video that you watched, is if cooperation is so good, why is there so much wealth inequality? Right? Like, if this system is supposed to be so good for so many people, why is it that you have a certain subset of individuals around the world that have exponentially more wealth than the bottom billion poorest individuals in the world? Remember what we said, that liberals argue that there's opportunities for conflict and cooperation in the international system. But what Marxists try to understand is why there's so much wealth inequality, both within states and between states. So, for example, why is there so much wealth disparity between a wealthy individual, a middle-class family, and the poorest of the poor in the world? So, the key assumptions for Marxism in international relations are as follows. Logically speaking, if all of human history is defined by class, therefore, logically speaking, so is international relations. International relations is equally defined by class, and therefore the key actors for Marxists in international relations are classes. And because class is an economic term, Marxists actually agree with liberals that wealth should be the metric of analysis. That when you look at the world, you study it based on its wealth. So the first to apply Marxism to this international relations sphere is Vladimir Lenin. And in the years leading up to World War I, he writes a book called Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, in which he asserts first and foremost that imperialism is not a military phenomenon, indeed it is an economic phenomenon, which has 5 basic features. The first, that the concentration of capital, production and capital has developed to such a high stage that it has created monopolies that play a decisive role in economic life. The second, the merging of bank capital with industrial capital and the creation of this financial capital, of a financial oligarchy. 3, the export of capital as distinguished from the export of commodities acquires exceptional importance. Capital flows in and out of a country become more important than flows of goods and produced goods, commodities. The formation of an international monopolist capitalist combinations which share the world amongst themselves, and thus the territorial division of the whole world among the biggest capitalist powers is completed. And so, here are the 5. Capitalism must have developed to a stage where monopolies exist that dominate societies and are too big to fail. 2, the creation of finance capital, the merging between industrial production and the banking sector. 3, the global exportation of capital/investment becoming central to finance capital. 4, the internationalization of certain companies that have global economic power. And lastly, the territorial division of the world amongst the major powers. According to Lenin, though, this is doomed to fail. And there's a simple reason why it is doomed to fail. Because unlike liberals, Marxists believe that wealth is finite. There is a finite amount of land in the world. There's a finite amount of places in the world. There's a finite amount of people in the world. And so, inevitably, you're going to reach a point that in order to expand, to continue expanding, you're going to have to take land from someone else. Imperialism will lead to great power war. And only a few years after he wrote it, it did. World War I. And so you add to the key assumptions of Marxism that wealth and power is zero-sum. If you want a breakdown of Marxism in relation to the other ones, here it is. Actors, states for realists, states, a whole bunch of other ones for liberals, and for Marxists, classes. Like liberals, Marxists believe that economic power is the metric of power, but like realists, Marxists argue that it is zero-sum. And because of that, wealth inequality exists because wealth is zero-sum. But of course, Lenin was writing a long time ago. And so is this still valid? Well, think about the global supply chain. Think about how we have internationalized the production of our goods. Where is everything made? It's made in, China and other countries of the developing world. Very few things are produced in America anymore, and that is because it is far simpler and far cheaper to internationalize that process. And yet that is simply another example of differential wealth inequality. So, let me give you an example. This here, sorry about that, I forgot to delete the video. This here is a breakdown of the world's largest companies. You have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 companies owning the vast majority of every brand that you see everywhere in your life. These companies own, when we talk about vast international monopolistic companies in Marxism, this is what we're talking about. Now, of course, Marxism also has its sort of neo-version when Immanuel Wallerstein updates it for the 21st century. And Wallerstein sort of does to Marxism a similar process to what structural realists did to realism, in that he says that the world system is not anarchic, but it is the distribution of capital, of wealth in the system that provides order. In fact, he argues, there are 4 main groups of countries. You have your core countries, your United States, your European Unions, your Canadas, your highly wealthy, dominant economies. Then you have core periphery countries. These are countries that are in geographic proximity to core countries, but are not necessarily as wealthy. Think Mexico. Think Egypt. Think Vietnam. These are countries that are close to core countries, but they're not as wealthy. Then the opposite is true. Periphery core countries. These are countries that are economically central to global peripheries. Think Brazil, India, South Africa, Indonesia, right? These are countries that are centrally located, economically speaking, in their global periphery. And lastly, periphery countries, the poorest economies in the world, where the poorest of the poor live. And so how does the world break down? Well, at the top of the food chain, you have your core countries, your core periphery countries. Your core periphery countries are, of course, reliant on core countries for goods, for services, for capital. Then you have your periphery core countries who are reliant on both. And I think you see where this is going. Periphery countries which are reliant on all 3. This is what we mean when we talk about global wealth inequality, because periphery countries are essentially losing money to all three players in the system. Now, why might countries in the bottom billion agree to be in the bottom billion? Well, Wallerstein argues that within each country, there is a subset of individuals, a subset of very rich government and economic elites who all collaborate with each other to keep this system in place because they are benefiting from it. So, for example, countries that get significant aid from Western countries, that aid very rarely makes it to the people on the ground that need it. Instead, it tends to trickle through a sieve, a coffee filter of people trying to take what they can and benefiting from it. Think Davos, Switzerland, and the economic conference that is held there. That crowd is what Marxists point to and say that's the problem. Now, I hope that made sense. This is a little bit shorter than the other lectures. Marxism in international relations tend to be a whole lot more straightforward. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Next lecture is going to be the last lecture in our series on political science, and I'll see you for it. See you next time. Bye-bye.